My name is Chloe, and I used to believe betrayal only came from strangers. Life, after all, had been kind in some ways. I had a loving husband, Daniel, and a beautiful son, Liam. Our days were full of laughter, stability, and love. Daniel's passing broke something in me I didn't know could shatter. He died suddenly, and I was left to raise Liam alone. But I pulled through, because Liam deserved peace. What I didn't know was that storm clouds were gathering, not from the outside world, but from within my own family. 3 months after Daniel's funeral, life began to settle into a strange routine. Grief lingered in the air like a heavy fog, but the world kept moving forward. Liam's laugh, though small, was my anchor. His eyes, always full of wonder, were a reminder of the future I had to fight for. I had given up everything for him, and I was more than willing to continue sacrificing. But then, the day Ava showed up at my door with her newborn son, my whole world began to tilt. It was a chilly, gray morning. I had just finished tidying up after breakfast when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and a slight unease filled me as I opened the door. There stood Ava, cradling a baby in her arms. My younger sister, the one who could do no wrong in the eyes of our parents, looked almost smug. Behind her stood our mother and father, standing too close together. Their expressions were unreadable, though I could feel the weight of their silent judgment. "Chloe," Ava said with a coolness I didn't quite understand. "We need to talk." Her words hit me like a slap. There was no warmth, no sympathy. No acknowledgement of the fact that I had just buried my husband and was still trying to hold everything together for our son. But Ava? She had her perfect little family, and now she was standing on my doorstep with her child, as if she were more important than ever. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though something inside me twisted. Something about this felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it yet. Ava glanced at our parents briefly, then back at me. "I've got something for you," she said, a strange confidence in her voice. She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers, holding them out to me. I stared at the documents, my eyes scanning the bold text at the top of the page, DNA report. I furrowed my brows, unsure of what I was looking at. Without a word, Ava placed the papers in front of me, gently guiding me to sit at the nearby table. She unfolded the pages, revealing detailed information. There it was, Daniel's name. His DNA, compared to the infant's. I could feel my pulse quicken as I read the bold percentage at the top, 99.9% match. I stood, my legs unsteady beneath me. What is this?" My voice wavered, panic rising in my chest. Ava didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised or upset. She looked almost satisfied. "Daniel is the father of my baby, Chloe. Caleb is his son." I blinked, not comprehending what she had just said. My mind struggled to catch up with the reality of the situation. No, that's impossible. He wasn't." I stammered, but the words wouldn't come out right. "You've been so busy grieving," Ava continued, her voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "But Daniel and I, well, we had more than just a fling. We had something real." My heart stopped, the room spinning around me. I couldn't breathe. How could she say that? I didn't know whether I should laugh or scream. "Are you telling me," I whispered, the words thick with disbelief, "that Daniel, my husband, cheated on me? With you? My sister?" Ava gave a nonchalant shrug, her face betraying no guilt. "He never told you, Chloe? You were too busy with Liam, I suppose. But I'm not surprised. He wanted me to have a family too." I felt like the walls were closing in on me. My whole world was crumbling, and the only thing I could hear was the thudding of my heart in my ears. I looked at our parents, desperately trying to find some sign that they had not known about this. But they didn't meet my gaze. They didn't even look uncomfortable. Instead, they sat there, nodding in agreement, as if this revelation was just another matter of fact. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice breaking. "You knew about this?" My mother sighed, looking weary. "He told us before he died, Chloe. He wanted to provide for both of his children. He was a good man, but he made a mistake." I stumbled back, my hand clutching the edge of the table to steady myself. "A mistake?" I repeated bitterly. "This is a mistake?" Dad, who had always been my rock, spoke up then, his voice quiet but firm. "Chloe, we didn't want to upset you. But Daniel was trying to fix things. He wanted to make sure Caleb was taken care of too. He even sent us emails before he passed, explaining everything." I wanted to scream. The betrayal, the deception, it was too much. I had lost my husband, and now, it felt like I was losing everything else. My sister, my parents, everyone had turned against me. Ava's smug smile remained. "I've been in contact with Daniel's lawyer. We'll be splitting the inheritance, half for Caleb, half for Liam. Daniel wanted that, and so do we." I couldn't even look at her anymore. "You've ruined everything," I muttered, choking on the words. "How could you do this to me?" Ava shrugged again. "I'm just doing what's best for Caleb. He deserves the same as Liam." I felt my stomach turn. It wasn't just about the inheritance. It wasn't about money at all. It was about the trust they had shattered. It was about the family I thought I could rely on, now exposed for what they truly were. With a final glance at my parents, who remained silent, I turned and walked away, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. All I could think about was the DNA report Ava had shoved in my face. The coldness of her words, and the indifference of my parents. It was as if they had all conspired to destroy me, and the worst part was that I didn't know why. Liam was confused too, his innocent eyes always searching for answers that I couldn't give. He had just lost his father, and now he was at the center of this twisted game. But I had to be strong for him. I had to find a way to protect him from the chaos my family had brought into our lives. I spent days fighting the rising tide of emotions, trying to make sense of the situation. How could Daniel, the man who had promised me loyalty, have betrayed me like this? How could my sister, the one person I should have been able to trust most, hurt me this way? But it wasn't just the betrayal that shook me, it was the fact that they were trying to take everything from Liam. The inheritance, meant for him and him alone, was suddenly in dispute. I sought legal counsel, but my lawyer warned me that Ava's DNA results were compelling. The emails my parents claimed Daniel had sent seemed to support her story. I was left scrambling for any shred of evidence that could prove they were lying. But there was nothing. At least, not at first. It wasn't until I started going through Daniel's things, his old office, the drawers he had left untouched, that I found something that gave me a sliver of hope. A false-bottomed drawer. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was an envelope with my name on it. I sat down at his desk, my heart pounding as I ripped it open. And there it was, Daniel's handwriting, clear as day. The aftermath of Ava's revelation hit me like a freight train, but I wasn't going to let them, destroy everything Daniel and I had built. I clung to the belief that Daniel had been honest with me, that he wouldn't have done this. But as time passed, I felt the walls closing in. The legal battle was inevitable. Ava had the DNA results, the emails from Daniel, the proof, as she said, showing that he intended to divide his estate between Liam and Caleb. But I didn't believe her. How could I? How could I believe anything after everything that had happened? I was furious. Furious at Ava for playing this game, furious at my parents for siding with her, and furious at myself for not seeing this coming. At first, it felt like I was drowning in legal jargon. I met with my lawyer, a woman named Suzanne, who was as calm as she was sharp. She told me that while the will was clear, Liam was the sole heir to Daniel's estate, the DNA evidence and the supposed emails from Daniel to my parents made things complicated. Suzanne went over the documents, the reports, and the statements. Ava had done her homework. The DNA test was official, taken from a legitimate clinic, and the emails, allegedly from Daniel, were convincing. They painted a picture of a man who had tried to make amends, a man who had wanted to provide for the child he'd conceived outside of his marriage. But deep down, I knew Daniel better than anyone. He was honorable, unwavering in his loyalty. He wouldn't have done this. He wouldn't have lied to me, and he certainly wouldn't have given up his son's inheritance to a child I had no knowledge of. And yet, here I was, fighting for my son's future, surrounded by lies and deceit. The court proceedings were long and painful. Ava, now holding her newborn Caleb in her arms, was relentless. Her lawyer was as sharp as they came, twisting words and exploiting every ounce of doubt in the case. I watched as they painted me as the grieving widow, desperate to hold on to what wasn't hers, while Ava was portrayed as the innocent mother simply trying to provide for her child. The whispers from my parents didn't help. They stayed silent for most of the proceedings, but their presence was heavy. I could see the disappointment in their eyes every time they glanced at me. They believed Ava. They always had. It didn't help that the family and friends I once relied on seemed to drift away, unwilling to get involved. They were uncomfortable, unsure of whose side to take. After all, Ava was the one with the proof, and I was the one standing in the way of a child's future. I wasn't just fighting for my son's inheritance. I was fighting for my family, my dignity, and my sanity. Days turned into weeks. Suzanne kept reassuring me that the will was on my side, but every time I went to court, the tension was unbearable. I could feel the weight of my family's judgment bearing down on me, and each passing day, I grew more convinced that they were all in on it. It felt like I was standing alone against the world. I was losing hope. It had been nearly a month since the court froze Daniel's estate. Every day felt like a battle, and I was growing weary. My emotions were a whirlwind of frustration, grief, and betrayal. I couldn't bring myself to trust anyone, not even my own family. My sister, the woman I had grown up with, had destroyed everything we had. And my parents? They had failed me. I had to face the painful truth, they weren't on my side. They were on Ava's. And so, I retreated into myself, burying myself in the remnants of Daniel's things. Maybe, somewhere, I could find a sign, a clue, something that would prove Ava's lies. One afternoon, while cleaning out Daniel's old study, I found myself opening drawers I had never bothered with before. They were filled with old paperwork, bills, and the odds and ends of his professional life. Nothing important, or so I thought, until my fingers brushed against something odd, something out of place. At the very back of the drawer, tucked beneath old receipts, was a small compartment. It was cleverly hidden, so much so that I hadn't noticed it before. I hesitated for only a moment before I opened it. Inside, there was an envelope sealed with wax, my name written carefully on the front. I sat down at Daniel's desk, the room quiet around me. My heart pounded in my chest as I carefully opened the envelope. The letter inside was short, but the words were all I needed to hear. It was Daniel's handwriting. My dearest Chloe, if you're reading this, it means the worst has happened. I want to make one thing absolutely clear, I have never cheated on you. Ava has tried for years to come between us. I've kept my distance, but she's manipulative and obsessive. If she ever claims to have a child of mine, she is lying. I know what she's capable of. She stole an old toothbrush and razors from our bathroom once. I fear she may try to fabricate DNA evidence. If anything happens to me, know that Liam is my only child, and everything I own belongs to him. I have a copy of this locked video recording in our safety deposit box. I love you endlessly, Daniel. My hands shook as I held the letter, the world around me spinning. My vision blurred with tears as I tried to process the words. Daniel. Daniel had known. He had known Ava's intentions. I collapsed in the chair, clutching the letter to my chest. It was like a weight had been lifted, but at the same time, it felt like the walls around me were closing in. Ava had made her move, and I had no idea if it was too late to stop her. But Daniel's words gave me something I hadn't had in days: hope. His voice, his love, his loyalty, they all came through in that letter. He had anticipated this, and in his final act, he had protected Liam and me from the very people who were trying to tear us apart. I stood up, determined. I wasn't going to let Ava win. I wasn't going to let my sister, my parents, or anyone else destroy my son's future. With the letter in hand, I called Suzanne, and together, we prepared to expose the truth. It was time to fight back. The letter I held in my trembling hands felt like a lifeline. Daniel's handwriting, his familiar curve of words, grounded me in a way I hadn't felt in weeks. In the midst of the chaos, of the lies and deceit, here was his voice, a calm, unwavering presence telling me everything I needed to hear. I sat in the chair, my legs weak beneath me, as I read through the letter again. Each word settled in my chest like a comfort, like a promise that I wasn't alone in this fight. Daniel had known. He had known what Ava was capable of, what she would try to do after his death, and he had taken steps to protect us. My emotions were a mix of relief, gratitude, and a deep, guttural sadness. I couldn't help but wonder why Daniel hadn't told me directly. But perhaps he knew that if he spoke to me about it, it would drive an even deeper wedge between Ava and me. He had chosen a quiet, deliberate form of protection, one that would allow the truth to come to light after he was gone, when I was ready to face it. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The evidence I needed to clear my son's name and ensure his future was now in my hands. But there was more to this letter than just words of comfort. It was a warning. Ava had done her best to manipulate us all, and Daniel had seen it coming. The mention of the stolen toothbrush and razors sent a chill through me. I remembered that time, years ago, when Daniel had quietly mentioned that Ava had been acting strangely. But I had brushed it off, assuming it was a misunderstanding. Now, in hindsight, I saw it for what it was, a calculated move by Ava to set the stage for her lie. As much as the letter comforted me, it also filled me with rage. How dare she do this? How dare she manipulate her own family to steal from my son? The letter, though, was more than just a warning. It was a weapon. A weapon I was going to use to take back what was rightfully ours. I grabbed my phone and called Suzanne immediately. "It's time," I said, my voice tight with determination. "We need to get to the lawyer's office now." The hours following my discovery of Daniel's letter were a blur. Suzanne and I quickly made arrangements to meet with our lawyer, and as I sat in the lawyer's office, the weight of the situation pressed down on me like never before. The truth, my truth, was now in my hands. The letter was a testament to Daniel's love for Liam and me, and it was all I needed to expose Ava for the fraud she was. Our lawyer, a sharp and experienced woman named Laura, was meticulous in her approach. She had seen this kind of deception before, but even she couldn't hide her shock when I showed her Daniel's letter. That's incredible," Laura said after reading the letter carefully. "This is exactly what we need. It's concrete proof that Ava's claims are baseless. We'll need to verify it, of course, but this is a game changer." It felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a small, exhausted smile. I wasn't going to lose. Daniel had left me everything I needed to fight back. Laura made some calls, and within the hour, we were on our way to the safety deposit box that Daniel had prepared for such a moment. The box had been locked up, with only the lawyer and a few trusted individuals knowing of its contents. Daniel had been thorough, even in death. Suzanne and I stood by anxiously as Laura opened the box and retrieved a small, unmarked USB drive. "This is it," Laura said, her voice filled with quiet reverence. Daniel made a video recording for this exact situation. Let's see what he has to say. The drive was inserted into a laptop, and we watched, silently, as the video began to play. Daniel's face appeared on the screen, and even though it had been weeks since I had seen him, my heart skipped a beat at the sight of him. He looked exactly as I remembered him, calm, confident, and so very much alive in the way he spoke. "My dearest Chloe," he began, his voice soft yet steady. "If you're watching this, then it means I'm no longer around to protect you and Liam. But I need you to know that I have always loved you, and I always will. I've watched Ava manipulate and lie to get what she wants, and I fear she'll try to do it again after I'm gone. If she ever claims to have had a child with me, I want you to know it's a lie. Liam is my only son. Always has been." The video continued, and Daniel spoke of the details I had missed, the times Ava had been overly friendly, the times she had gotten too close, too eager to insert herself into our family. He explained the toothbrush incident and how he had known that Ava would eventually fabricate evidence to lay claim to the inheritance. As the video went on, I felt my anger grow. How dare she? How dare she try to destroy my son's future? But Daniel wasn't finished. "I've left a copy of this video with my lawyer," he continued. "It's for you, Chloe. It's for Liam. I've also made sure that my will is clear. Everything I own belongs to Liam. I hope this letter and video will be enough to ensure that Ava's lies don't stand." The video ended, and I sat in stunned silence. Daniel's words had been more than I could have ever hoped for. The video, the letter, the truth, they all pointed to the same conclusion: Ava had been lying, and now there was proof. I looked at Suzanne, who was just as stunned as I was. "We need to take this to court," I said, my voice steady despite the rush of emotion. "It's time to end this." The court date arrived sooner than I expected, and despite the exhaustion weighing me down from the emotional and mental toll of the past few weeks, I felt a quiet sense of confidence. We had the letter, we had the video, and we had the truth on our side. There was no way they could spin this into anything else. But I knew Ava, she was crafty, manipulative, and would stop at nothing to take what didn't belong to her. I could feel the tension in the air as the trial began. Ava sat at the other side of the courtroom, her eyes darting nervously as her lawyer made his arguments. She looked composed, but I could see the telltale signs of anxiety beneath her cool exterior. Her lawyer, a man I had never seen before, made the case that the DNA test was irrefutable proof that Daniel was the father of her son, Caleb. He presented the results as though they were sacred, and my heart twisted with the memory of how she had manipulated our entire family. I couldn't believe it, the lies were still coming. But this time, I was prepared. When it was my turn to present, I stood tall, holding the letter from Daniel and the USB drive containing the video. I looked at the judge, my lawyer, and then at the gallery where my parents sat, avoiding my gaze. They knew better than to make eye contact now. The tension in the room thickened. "We have more than DNA tests and emails," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. "We have a letter from my late husband, Daniel, and a video he made before his passing. This letter and video state clearly that any claim of Ava's is false." I handed the letter to the judge, and with a motion from my lawyer, the video was shown to the court. Daniel's voice filled the room, and I watched as Ava's face began to contort with fear. She could see where this was going, but it was too late for her to stop it now. As the video played, Daniel's words cut through the air. "Ava has lied, and she has tried to manipulate my family. She has no claim over my estate. Everything I have is for Liam." The sound of the truth, straight from Daniel's lips, was a balm for the wounds Ava had inflicted. I could see her hands shaking as she tried to maintain her composure. But she was unraveling. Her carefully constructed web of lies was crumbling, and she was powerless to stop it. The judge, a seasoned professional who had seen countless cases like this, didn't hesitate. He addressed Ava's lawyer sharply. "Your evidence is fabricated," he said. "The DNA test came from an unverified source, and the emails were proven to be doctored. As for the letter and video, they're authentic, and it's clear to this court that Daniel's wishes were to leave everything to his son, Liam. I couldn't help but let out a breath of relief. The verdict was already beginning to take shape in my mind, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the court ruled in our favor. But Ava wasn't going down without a fight. As the judge adjourned for deliberation, she stood up, her voice trembling as she shouted, "This isn't fair. Daniel promised me. He promised me I would have a life, that Caleb would have security. You can't just take that away from us." Her outburst didn't make a difference. The damage was already done. The judge's decision came shortly after. Ava's claims were rejected, and she was formally charged with attempted fraud for fabricating evidence to steal from my son. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Ava's face turned pale as the truth of her deceit became public. Her lawyer couldn't even meet her eyes as the ruling was made. I could see her crumbling, just like the house of cards she had built. It was over. The days following the court's ruling were a whirlwind. Ava had tried everything she could to ruin our lives, but in the end, the truth prevailed. The media picked up the story quickly, sensation sells, after all. Articles flooded the internet, each one highlighting Ava's fraud and her attempts to steal from a grieving mother and child. My parents, who had stood by her side throughout this, were now facing their own backlash. They tried to maintain their innocence, claiming they had been duped by Ava, but their credibility had already been shattered. For the first time, I saw the full extent of their complicity. They had known what Ava was doing, and they had chosen to side with her, rather than supporting the truth. It was a betrayal I would never fully forgive. They had allowed a lie to flourish because it suited them. And when it all came crashing down, they were left with nothing but shame. I couldn't bring myself to speak to them. The distance between us had grown too wide. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. Ava's downfall wasn't just the loss of her inheritance, it was the destruction of her relationship with our parents. After the trial, I heard that she was struggling financially and emotionally. Her life had fallen apart, and her once perfect facade had shattered. As for me, I moved on with Liam. We settled into a new home, far away from the toxic environment that had once been my family. It was a fresh start, one I needed. I bought a house, a place where Liam could grow up surrounded by love and peace. The house was mine, entirely. Daniel had wanted it that way, and I had honored his wishes. Liam was finally safe, free from the shadow of betrayal that had loomed over us for so long. I had to remind myself that in the end, Daniel had done the right thing. He had left us everything we needed, even from beyond the grave. His foresight had saved us. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain: I would never allow anyone to manipulate me again, and I would never let anyone steal from my son. I had learned the hard way that truth, no matter how painful, always prevails. As for my parents and Ava, I heard they were living together now. In the house they had bought with the proceeds from their deception. They had lost everything: respect, integrity, and family. The public shame was too much for them to bear. I had Liam, and that was enough. Together, we were going to be okay. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that the worst was behind us.